Good afternoon. My name is Robert Mardolacci of the Mindshare Learning Report, Canada's Learning and Technology e-magazine. And I'm thrilled to host this afternoon's webinar in partnership with CLASS on the future of learning and digital learning and creating equitable opportunities for all students. And today's special guest who's joining me is Dr. Kim Oppelt, who is the Community and Advocacy Manager at CLASS. And she's a researcher and thought leader and director with a mission to ensure that all students are prepared to set and meet their post and secondary goals. And she has a doctorate from St. Mary's University of Minnesota. And thank you for joining me this afternoon, Dr. Oppelt.
Thank you so much, Robert. It's great to be here.
Awesome.
So yeah, I can take over too, and
Sure.
and I'm so excited to talk about the future of the classroom. And it's really been a long couple of years, but I think the beauty of it is that we're coming out on the other side with so much knowledge and experience, and really a new charge to move forward into the next generation of virtual classrooms. So really excited to be here and talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And this is just the agenda. We just thought we'd run through a little bit about CLASS. I wanted to make sure that you know where I'm coming from. And then we'll discuss a little bit about the topics of access and equity in the digital classroom, especially. And then we'll end on quite a few Q&A, just a conversation. So looking forward to the discussion, but definitely wanted to set the stage first. And as Robert mentioned, I am the Senior Director of Advocacy and Community at CLASS. I did my doctoral studies in first generation, college access, and just a lot around the first generation students. So excited to talk a little bit more about that, go back to my roots, and talk about where we're going. So really quickly, just wanted to share a little bit about what CLASS is and where we're going. I always tell people we are a pandemic baby. So we were born during the pandemic in the time where students and staff were all forced to emergency remote learning. So we were all learning on Zoom or Teams or even just asynchronously. So our founder is also the founder of Blackboard and has 2 kids at home. So when he was seeing that his kids were learning in maybe a one-dimensional video conferencing system, he knew that there had to be more. So he just kind of invented really CLASS, which is a virtual classroom technology. So it's really, we call it the first essential synchronous learning application that really allows instructors to engage even more with their students and kind of mimic that virtual or that in-person classroom experience. So we not only have tools that allow instructors to engage with their students, but we track that, we measure it, we take attendance, we have secure proctoring methods, we have seating charts, and just a lot of the tools that you would imagine in that face-to-face classroom in a virtual environment. So this is a little bit of what it looks like, and just wanted to highlight even a couple of different tools that are my favorite tools. The first is enhanced breakout rooms. So this is one of my favorite things, and really great for differentiated learning, for individualized learning, and really taking that next like small group aspect into the virtual classroom. So our enhanced breakout rooms allow for a teacher, instructor to develop different breakout rooms based on either random or based on student needs, and deploy different activities to those rooms, but then they also get to oversee those rooms. So I think that if we learned anything over the past couple of years, is if you put students into a Zoom room or a virtual learning room alone, they don't really do much. But if the teacher gets to oversee that, they can drop in on rooms whenever needed if they see that students are kind of at a standstill or need some additional help. Then they can drop in. They can also deploy different resources to different rooms. So if there's a group working at a different pace than another one, they can drop different resources in. So really gives some personalized aspect to the Zoom rooms. My other favorite tool is the proctored exam. So this is something that has come along in the past, I think, few months, maybe 6 months or so. And our tool class allows for teachers or instructors or even just proctors to monitor a student's desktop as they're taking exams. So no longer do we have to have students come into the building if they need to take an exam or to go to a proctoring location to take an exam. They can do that all online. We are hearing from institutions that they are saving so much money when it comes to proctoring because they don't have to use an outside tool. They can just do this right within their own system. And just monitor what's happening, respond to students as they have questions, and it makes proctoring very easy. So there are so many more tools that I could go on and on, but I wanted to keep it short. I wanted to just show you a little bit before we set the stage a little bit with the future classroom.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Oppelt. Now perhaps we can flow into the Q&A. And first of all, what is digital equity and why is it so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just gonna, let's see, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. Let's see, stop this. I think that makes it a little bit easier, but so digital equity is kind of a hot topic, and it's been emerging and evolving, I think, over the past couple of years specifically. And it's I think when I think about it, I think about digital competency, maybe digital advancement and innovation. So, are students competent at the same level? Are they understanding the technology, how to use basic technology, how to access basic technology? Are they, do they and perhaps their caregivers, do they know how to use the basic technology all on the same level? I think when we came into this whole emergency remote learning situation, that not everyone was on the same level, especially when it came to devices and when it came to Wi-Fi access and all of those things. I think we really saw an emergence of inequity, and it's been nice to see a real focus on that, especially that competence piece of digital equity. And then when it comes to advancement too, as part of that digital equity piece, are we able to advance our digital awareness in areas that maybe we haven't in the past? So our schools who are well funded or in neighborhoods that are well funded, are they on the same kind of wavelength as students that may be in areas that are not as well funded? So are we allowing, those underserved populations the opportunity to advance and grow in their technological knowledge and their technological tools that they have in front of them? And then that final piece, as I mentioned, was innovation. And I think, that's in the definition of digital equity, it's that innovation is it's going quickly and it's going slowly all at the same time, I think. But are we innovating? Are we providing all students, all staff, all caregivers the opportunity to stay on top of innovation and make sure that we're all growing together? And then why is it so important? I think in working with students, and especially students who were graduating from high school and going into a post-secondary experience or just going to work right after high school, I think it's important as we're preparing this next generation of students and learners for the workforce. They really will need the knowledge and the tools to succeed, regardless of their situation, regardless of where they're going. And it really, if they are entering the workforce without these tools and without having that digital equity and digital competence, that they're going to be starting a step behind.
Absolutely. I know the OECD education group has been speaking a lot about this, and definitely serves as a leveling of the playing field, as you alluded to. And
Right.
Dr. Steve Jordan from the University of Toronto, I interviewed this morning, talked about the threat of the great snapback. So the challenge is to take some of the great innovations that have happened, and really it's got to be evidence-based. And that's part of the theme of our Fall EdTech Leadership Summit. It's around, driving innovation through evidence-based research, right? That's absolutely critical.
Right, absolutely. And it's great because I think, again, as unfortunate as this whole situation has been, I think we're going to come out with some really, really interesting data on how to move that needle forward.
Fascinating. Well, let's move on to the next question. How can schools ensure access to technology for underserved students? I've seen some really innovative concepts emerge over the pandemic. We've seen flying satellites over, Starlink satellites over school districts to bring equity to underserved communities. So over to you.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think, if anything, these past couple of years have really shined a light onto equity and the tools that students need to be successful. And, not every school before going into the pandemic had a laptop per student, or even maybe a computer per student. Students didn't even, have their own phones. But I think coming out of that, we saw a lot of funding going toward one-to-one devices at schools, and so that they could take them home, or just ensuring that rural areas are properly equipped with the broadband access that they need, and then even enabling underserved or parents of underserved students in just how to use the tools that they have, how to access parent portals and things like that. So I think that the hardware is there, right? So schools have the hardware. We're there. I think we're doing a great job at being in that place. So then the next step in ensuring access is to really focus on the software. So not even just the software, and I know that we have a ton of different pieces of software that come along with a digitally forward or digitally innovative school, and they're all so great to work with, and I think just really being able to activate those tools that schools do have is important. So I have a high school student. I have a 9th grader, and I have a 6th grader, and both have spent part of elementary and middle school and high school in 2 different schools, and just the onslaught of links and everything that I was receiving was a little overwhelming. So we worked with the schools to really focus in on, what tools are essential. Where's the home base for those tools? Are we using a single sign-on to allow parents and caregivers to get in and use those tools? And then once they're in, how do they use it, right? So how do you know, and not even just for caregivers, but even for students, especially younger students or really any student, do they know what tool to use, and when do they know how to use the tool to its maximum benefit? So has to be a lot of focus on, really getting in and using that software and implementing with fidelity. And that's, one thing that I love about class is that we don't just, hand over a product. We've been spending a lot of time on ensuring that that schools are prepared and ready to launch. There's a lot of movement that happens on the back end of a software implementation, and it's not easy. So use your software vendors and training teams to help implement in the right way. And then finally, in ensuring access, I think that it's vital to utilize the resources that are out there. So grants, there are a ton of grants out there for software tools and hardware tools, nonprofits that help with not only funding, but also on utilization and becoming a hub for caregivers and students as they need to succeed. In my own daughter's school, we are putting a little bit of focus on to bringing her underserved school into a more a highlighted environment where we're trying to go after that funding and make sure that they are just as innovative as the other schools in the district. And it's not easy, and especially for those schools who may have those underserved populations who may not be receiving as much funding to really go after that.
Yeah, and they're lucky to have you, I would say. And I made every effort to get involved in my kids' school when they were in elementary. Not that they appreciate it all the time, but
I'm sure they love the pressure from me.
That's right. But it's really about using the right tool at the right time. It's no different than having a toolbox. And, I've been building my in-laws' deck with my brother-in-law, who's an engineer, the last few weeks. And yeah, he's got a lot more tools than I have, and he just goes crazy. But you can be overwhelmed, right? You have to be laser focused. And ISTE has some great resources, insight on recommended tools. So there are great websites that are out there, and ISTE's not for profit, and we will be at that conference as you will be. And so let's move on to the next question, because professional learning is a big part of it as well. And but what challenges need to be taken into consideration when implementing new technology in the classroom? I know many districts require it to be peer reviewed at the district level. Some are like, hey, try whatever you want, and more laissez-faire about it. But sort of use that French jargon on you, but we
I love it.
we are in Canada, so there you go. Over to you, Kim.
Absolutely. I mean, there definitely are challenges. I would say that it feels like the evolution over the past couple of years has gone more to an acceptance of new technology, because I would have, 3 or 4 years ago, I would have started out this response as you need to figure out how to get over the naysayers or the people who are reluctant to use technology, but everyone was forced to do it. So, kind of in that same realm, everyone was forced to do it. Everyone has that aptitude, but they don't have, they're not on the same playing field when it comes to technical competency. So, we have students who are on their phone 24/7. They know how to use every video gaming system and every computer and laptops and phones. But then we also have students who don't have that exposure at home to technology. They for better or for worse, they're outside after school and aren't on the computer every day, and maybe they don't adapt as well in some softwares and tools and even technologies aren't as innate to them as other students. And I think we all know the same goes for staff. So there are the staff members who are willing to jump in and respond and try something new out, and then there are others that are just, if you bring it to me and I have to do it, I'll do it, but I'm not going to go and seek out anything new. So I think that, that's where we're starting. And when it comes to implementing brand new technology, aside from the people, I think I used to be a school counselor, and when I was trying out new technologies, especially introducing it to staff, I would kind of embrace the learning curve. So I would go for whatever low-hanging fruit we could. So what are the kind of the easiest pieces of a tool that we could introduce first that are going to be the most helpful and the most successful, and kind of get people excited, and then just slowly kind of go with that learning curve and ease it in, ease a tool in. And then I think too, a challenge that exists, but also I'm going to offer the solution too, but a challenge that exists is just, being aware of the student needs. There's so many different student needs, and there are so many different levels. So it's important to really work with any technology companies or consulting companies or anything like that to walk with you in implementing a new software, a new tool, and just really go, hand in hand. And that's what we're here for.
Absolutely. And we see, the pent up demand and openness to partnerships like never before.
Mm-hmm.
And the pandemic spurred that on because it takes a village to, I like to say it takes a digital village to raise a child in the 21st century. So here's a challenging question for you. What do you see as the future classroom looking like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what do we see the future classroom look like? I think that the beauty of this is, who knows? It can be anything. So, I mean, does a future classroom have four walls? Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's four walls in my own house. Maybe it's the outdoor classroom. So the beauty of the future classroom is that I think the center of it is A, engagement, and B, technology. So if we have that technology, we can really take students anywhere. We can help them learn from anywhere. So it's really learning regardless of space or place. I think that's really the heart of it. So it's individualized learning. It's putting students into situations where they are challenged, putting students into situations where they're nurtured, depending on their needs, and really meeting their needs before meeting the overall needs of the classroom. I know it'll be still important to assess learning and growth, but what does that learning and growth look like from the student perspective versus what the government thinks or what professionals think. So I think it's really based on a student-centric model, and I'm just really excited to see the walls of the classroom really expand.
That's right. A good point. Learning happens everywhere. So you're not restricted to those four walls thanks to some great technology like class that enables that. So how do we sustain innovation in the classroom beyond the pandemic? And I talked earlier about the potential of the great snapback.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny because I've said this so many times, but prior to the pandemic, I was part of quite a few working groups with superintendents that were focused on the future of education and the schools of tomorrow. And we would talk a lot about, we don't need 30 desks in a room anymore. We can do more, but as much as we talked about it, not a lot changed. So I think now we're at the point where we are able to make that change, just because everything is kind of blown up in our face. And as much as we can talk about getting back to normal, there is no normal anymore. So I think when we look at sustaining those innovations in the classroom and keeping that momentum going forward is I think, first of all, just to be aware of it and to be deliberate in keeping that momentum and making sure that we're not stepping backwards when it comes to technology, both hardware and software, that we're keeping students engaged, that we're keeping our staff aware and trained and in the loop when it comes to all of this. So really wanted to be deliberate in that way. And then, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that's a great segue to my next question, but I'll let you finish up.
Oh, no, that's fine. I think just a couple of other things. I think when I think about sustaining those innovations is to just keep families involved and excited about what's happening. And then to really, again, coming back to the whole, I'm biased because I am one now as a former educator, but now moving forward, I think we're seeing so many educators get involved in technology. So our education technology companies are even more informed and more empathetic to what our staff, our teachers and our administrators and staff is going through. So ask for help and make sure that we're asking for help from technology providers and making sure that we're implementing the software in the best way.
Thank you for that. What support and training is needed for teachers, administrators? I'm going to add parents into the equation as innovations in technology continue, because I know many school districts actually had a parent portal that they provided resources and videos and how-tos, because they're very much of the the support system now, aren't they?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So for both caregivers and for administrators and teachers and paras, and, everyone who's involved in that circle of community for that student. What support and training is needed? I would say probably first of all, just hands-on experience. And again, as a former counselor who kind of came in to the field at the height of educational technology, or maybe even the onslaught of educational technology, is just getting that hands-on experience is so important. And, you can talk pie in the sky forever, but until someone gets their hands on a tool, it doesn't really make sense. So get that hands-on experience as soon as possible. Ask your staff members who are early adopters of software to train the trainer. So, or, to be the trainer and train their own staff. That peer-to-peer connection is really important. And seeing, learning something from a co-teacher is so much different than learning it from a vendor, and just, empowering your own staff to be able to share out is so important. And then I would even take a step back even further and talk about the procurement process. So make sure that your staff members, not just administration, but your teachers, and again, your paras, and maybe even your students are part of that procurement process when you're evaluating new technologies. So as we're moving forward, ask the hard questions of software companies, and allow a lot of people to test it out before you purchase, and that helps to kind of seed the buy-in at a bottom level, and then it just sprouts up after that, and really is contagious.
Well said. Here's a challenging question: what lessons are learned after 2 years of the pandemic and digital learning?
Yeah. So I think, so some of the lessons that are learned, I think, first and foremost is students can adapt, right? Like we force a lot of students into a different way of learning, and staff too. So students can adapt, staff can adapt. We can all do hard things, and it's time to, keep challenging us to do those hard things. And on top of that, we need to be more deliberate about how we're measuring things. So I think before, the pandemic, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, again, we weren't talking about engagement as an indicator in the classroom. So, we knew if students were paying attention, we knew if they were, facing forward, but we didn't truly know how engaged. So I think that engagement is key. And now that we're in a digital world, it's harder to understand that engagement, but it might be easier to measure it. So we're taking a long look at how you measure those things in class, and really how to develop an engaging environment that produces student outcomes, that gets students and staff excited, and that we can measure and follow along as we go.
Fascinating insight, and you've been at the forefront of it, and it's I think that's where it becomes highly motivating and rewarding to see the impact that class has made, along with other mission critical tools to enable sustained learning during a crisis. And I think without it, there would have been, paper packages being delivered to homes, and that was the other option. So I think, kudos to you and your colleagues for all the great effort that you went through in the last couple of years. But what unique needs does digital learning meet from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think when we're taking a look at the needs that it meets, and kind of the indicators that are coming out, I think maybe we just need to take it one step back and figure out what we're looking for, right? Like, or what are we trying to track when it comes to engagement, when it comes to reaching students, and when it comes to just really the digital world. So we've been focusing a lot on, like I mentioned, those engagement indicators. So what, does it mean engaged if a student shows up to class? We can track that, But then what is the correlation between attendance and comprehension, or talk time and assessment outcomes? So we're taking a real good look at how we can compile all of those indicators. We even have a feature on our software that tracks attention. So if a student is clicked over on another application on their computer, or clicked off of the class application in some way, the instructor just gets a little notification next to the student's dashboard that shows them that that student may not quite being as engaged as they should be. And we also track talk time and students asking questions and things like that. So we've been paying a lot of attention to those tools that are going to help us to define an engaged student, and to, again, help every student learn regardless of space or place. And then when we look at the unique needs that digital learning meets, I think that, over the past couple of years, students have really had some time to understand and figure out the format in which they learn best. I have one kid that was just fine in a synchronous and asynchronous environment, got up, got the job done, and moved on with his life. And another kid, my daughter, who really craved the walks down the hallway and the activities after school. And so there were really two different formats in who thrived and who didn't. And, obviously it has something to do with delivery and engagement in that way, but we're seeing that digital learning works for, independent students who are independent and want to be independent learners, students who are advanced, students who are looking for some learning recovery, and then just a lot of individual learning opportunities for students. So if a course is offered in a different school in the area, or even across the country, students can dial into those courses and take something that's more interesting to them. And then so it can be an all-in thing, or it can be a course or two. It can be hybrid. It can be all synchronous, partly synchronous. So I really think that there is a digital learning opportunity for all students, whether they're in a physical classroom full-time or not. But we're seeing that digital learning is really expanding the world for so many students and instructors.
Absolutely. And as you alluded to earlier, it's really helping prepare them for, their lives in the future, is digital savvy, contributing citizens, globally minded. The sustainable development goals are being embraced by schools, and kids are more apt to want to make an impact, right? Hence, we see so many the startup culture, and especially in the ed tech space. But perhaps you can share, you've seen so many great examples. Perhaps you can share a success story that comes to your mind in the last couple of years that really made it special for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I have to, and this is probably, it's not necessarily a K-12 success story, but I just got back from a trip to one of our 2-year colleges who has been using class, and it's a really, really large organization with a big population of underserved students. So they have really been able to not only scale their synchronous virtual learning, but they have been able to reach a lot of students who may have been kind of unreachable in the past, or just not enthralled with the in-person learning, not able to get to school on time, not able to balance life and school at the same time. So it's been a really eye-opening experience to see how they we're able to bring that virtual or that learning to life, actually, for students, especially from populations that may not have pursued higher education. And they've also, they've been able to save a lot of money when it comes to proctoring and to just scaling all of their events and programs. So just that. I think, coming from the background that I come from, and all of the work that I've done with first generation underserved students, it's been really inspiring and eye-opening to see so many students succeeding in a virtual environment.
Amazing. Now, perhaps we'll move to the Q&A portion of the webinar. And I do have a question that came in from Adam. One of the greatest challenges for pandemic classes has been the hybrid setup, students both in the classroom and remote. How does class help address this through hardware, software, instructional strategy solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have thought about this kind of mixed hybrid classroom since the very beginning, and knowing that that students may have a choice. Some students may be out for the pandemic and sick and still want to join class, and often when that happens, or whether it's by choice or by force, we really want students to be able to have that same opportunity to learn. So in class, we've kind of been exploring the option for the instructor to, they can drop in websites or their LMS and allow students to work right within the platform. And every student can do that within the classroom, the four walls of the classroom or beyond. And if everyone's working within, the same virtual classroom, maybe those in the room have their sound off or their video or their speaker off, but they're all hearing the same instruction from the instructor who is teaching on the podium, but both live in front of them, and for those at home on the virtual podium. So they're seeing the teacher in the same way. They are interacting in the same line of communications. They're being able to be put into breakout rooms, whether they're in the physical classroom or not. So there are a lot of different ways and models that we're looking at, and that class can help really support that hybrid classroom.
Dr. Oppelt, this has been an amazing conversation this afternoon. I don't have any further questions. Any final thoughts to share, perhaps?
I just wanted to say, well, thank you, first of all, absolutely, for having me and for highlighting class. It's been a real honor to be working with so many educators, especially, again, as a former educator myself, and to see this true evolution of digital learning take place. So I'm excited about the future. Can't wait to collaborate with others on where we go from here. But it's been an honor. So thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. And if you wanted to learn more,
please visit class.com. We have actually some great resources in our resource library, and we would love to show you a little bit more about class. So stop by class.com and we'd be happy to connect.
Thank you again, Kim. That was Dr. Kim Oppelt, who's the Director of Community and Advocacy at class. My name is Robert Mardlachi of the Mindshare Learning Report. Be sure to check out www.mindshare learning to get your latest issue. And then until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.
Thank you.